We should be going live. All right, everybody. How's everybody doing today?
Doing great this evening.
Dale, you doing good?
Doing great.
Chris, you doing well?
I'm all good.
Great. Well, look, everybody, I'm Tyler Bailey. I'm running for City Council at large here in Columbia, South Carolina. And this is my first time with you all today. And what I'm doing is a series throughout my campaign, talking to people from the community who are doing great things about issues that are very important so that Columbia can go to the next level. So I'm calling the talks with Tyler to take Columbia to the next level. And April is Financial Literacy Month. And so for this month, for this topic today, we want to talk about financial literacy, which I believe is an issue that is really important for our community. And if we're not financially literate, then our city will not thrive in a way it should. And I have two great special guests today. Two of us are bald. One has hair, but both these guys are remarkable, very intelligent. They know a lot about finances, and I'll let them introduce themselves, starting with Dell.
Thank you so much, Tyler, for inviting me on. And this is an exciting time. And, you know, what your vision is talking about this community, and it's near to my heart, Columbia, and of course, the state of South Carolina and the city. It's pretty phenomenal. I'm Dell Hawkins. I have an awesome, beautiful wife, Cynthia Hawkins, and two young adult children. And we're in the financial services business. I got involved in this business some 36 years ago, and got into insurance, got into some financial planning and certified financial planner, and basically kind of curtailed that into a final expense company today from New Jersey to Florida, where we serve some 330 agents that work with seniors. And so I've kind of passed the mantle of that financial planning on to partnerships and relationships that can better serve the customers. And I concentrate primarily on hiring and training, developing people for final expense to serve an underserved market. And so I'm so happy that this is a topic, because we want to prevent a lot more people from being in a position as some of our clients that don't have very much time left, and they're on this fixed income. So thank you, Tyler, for bringing me on today, and we're excited.
Well, thank you. And Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, Tyler, thanks for having me too. I'm excited to be a part of this conversation, as well as supporting you and your campaign. You know, you got a lot of things that you're wanting to bring to the table and bring changes to Columbia that we need. So I'm excited to be a part of this and to help you throughout your campaign. My name's Chris Leventis. I'm the owner of Leventis Financial. I provide services in forensic accounting and business valuation. Long and short of forensic accounting, anytime somebody like Tyler, that's an attorney, if they deal with complex financial issues such as fraud, if you got a high estate divorce case where somebody's trying to hide a bunch of money, they're always going to get a forensic accountant involved to try to put the puzzle together and show the court the true financial picture, or to point out where fraud has taken place. And that's where I come in. From the business valuation side, I do a lot of, estate and gift tax stuff. So if somebody's wanting to gift down ownership in a business to a child or to whomever, they always have to get that business valued to be able to pass down that interest. My valuations, they go from 5 million in gross revenue upwards of 350 million a year in gross revenue. So it's kind of all over the place. But the work is extremely fun, and it's never a dull moment.
And, Chris, a couple things just to harp on what you said. We're talking about financial literacy today. I'm a lawyer, right? So that means I went graduate high school, graduate undergrad, with a law school, took the bar, passed the bar, and a lot of what you just said went over my head. So look, you are very financially literate, and I believe that you have a lot of good information that's going to be helpful for everybody watching. And another thing, Chris, how old are you? If you don't mind sharing with everybody.
I'm 30. So I started my practice when I was 28.
Great, man. And I'm an entrepreneur. Dell's an entrepreneur. We're three entrepreneurs here today. You started your business at 28. I want to commend you for that also, and also commend you for starting your business right here in Columbia. One of the big things for my platform is I think Columbia needs to do a real better job in retaining our talent. And like people like yourself who are from here, you could have went to Charleston, you could have went to Charlotte, you could have went to New York City, and did some real deep diving in people's finances, but you stayed right here. So I'm happy that you're here. I'm sure Dell is and everybody viewing, and we look forward to the information that you're going to give everybody today. So the first question I want to ask y'all is, what does being financially literate mean to you? And I'm going to start with you, Dell.
The first thing is the fundamental basics of just having an idea of a relationship with money, and knowing what your income is and what your expenses are, and having some idea of financial balance in your life. Hearing from Chris and sharing what he's sharing is on the other end from where I work with most people in the grassroots place that are just trying to pay their bills, trying to save some money, trying to make sure when hiccups happen, life happens, that it does not derail them. You know, something as simple as the pandemic is very complex, and so many lives are in the balance just 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 6 weeks away from a paycheck. And so being financial literate means understanding where you are and having an understanding as to why I want to know certain things about my finances. And hopefully through the talk today, Tyler, we'll get a chance to touch some of those things, you know, on the surface, so that people can understand very much why people like Chris are so important when it comes to living in the greatest country in the world. I did not know, Chris, that I had a situation some years ago with an insurance company, and we were going through some litigation, and they hired a forensic person like you, and he was very expensive. The law firm brought him in, and he did an evaluation for me based on the trajectory of what my future income would be, in order to be able to sell an insurance case claim with an insurance company. And I thought it was very interesting. I was much younger then, and they were able to have value in that because my opportunity to continue work would have been greater had I not had a situation with them that forced us to have to litigate with them. So exciting times, but the basics is, you know, what happens if I don't go to work tomorrow? What happens if I have a laid off situation? What happens if I have a healthcare issue? What happens if I have an accident? What happens if that same thing happens to my spouse or some of my children or to my elderly parents? How can I know what's necessary if I'm not financially literate? So it means the world to me. It's my passion in the business that I'm in, and I'm on a crusade to help those people that are in middle America that want to go to the next level. Because if you don't go to the next level, Tyler, you'll wind up going to a lower level. So it's critically important.
You know, before we get too far into this, everybody who's watching, if you have a question regarding anything concerning financial literacy, please do not hesitate to ask us. Post your comment. If it's a good question, I'll make sure it's on the screen so our panelists can answer it, and we'll go from there. And also, too, financial literacy for me is something that's personally important. My father, who's a pastor, Bishop Herbert Bailey of Right Direction Church International right here in Columbia, really, I was blessed to have a dad who gave us information about how to be financially literate. We learned about debt, savings, interest, things that I wasn't taught in school and things that he wasn't taught in school. And I learned from his mistakes. And so I was privileged to have that situation and that upbringing. Not everybody has that. And I think that's a gap that cities and municipalities really need to step in to fill in that void. Because Dell and I had a conversation off camera earlier today, and we talked about how we're in a good situation now because financial literacy is being taught in some schools. But financial literacy needs to be taught to adults, which we'll be we'll talk further about later, because look, the adults who did not learn about financial literacy in school are now adults and they don't have that knowledge. So in order for us to be successful, like Dell just said, if you're not going to step up, unfortunately, you're more likely to make a mistake, especially when the area of finances and fall down. So being financially literate is one of the most important things. And Chris, to you, to ask you the same question, what does being financially literate mean to you?
Well, I guess, I'll echo somewhat on what Mr. Hawkins said. if you're literate in the terms of being able to read and write, you have to be literate enough to read the most simple book. Being financially literate, you have to understand finance, enough where you can put yourself on a simple budget. Understand that if you get a credit card and you rack up $1,000 in credit card charges, you need to understand that there's interest on that. And that if you don't pay off that $1,000, that $1,000 debt is going to grow. A lot of times at a substantial rate. I mean, people are paying 20, 30% a year in interest. And that's a problem. And if you don't understand finance at the simplest terms, that's something you won't understand, and you won't know why, this credit card bill went from 1,000 to 2,000, without you making any other charges to it. So understanding finance to the point where you can budget yourself and build wealth, because if you don't, like what Mr. Hawkins said, these issues come up where, somebody gets sick, maybe you're not able to go to work for a couple months, but you still got to support your family. So if you've budgeted yourself well enough, you can get over that 3-month hiccup. So to me, being financially literate understands finance to the point where you can budget yourself and manage your money. And I guess a quick little story that I shared with you, Tyler, earlier, and I won't throw out any names in case he's watching right now, but I graduated college in 2013, and one of my best friends did as well. April of 2014 came around, and April is tax filing time. This friend of mine was making some good money, and his boss 1099'd him. And when somebody gives you a 1099, typically they don't withhold any taxes from you. So if they pay you, $60,000 in a year, then you're going to get that 60 grand. And the IRS or the South Carolina Department of Revenue, they hadn't touched their bit of money yet, And so this individual filed his tax return and called me and said, dude, I just filed my tax return. I'm thinking I'm about to get a refund and I owe $7 grand in taxes. And this is somebody who went to a private school locally. So, ideally a great education. And this is somebody that went to USC. But this same individual didn't understand the fundamentals of tax to the point where he had a $6,000 tax debt and no money to pay it. And one last little example, I recently mentored a kid in high school and he came and shadowed me for a day. I was already a little concerned because as a junior in high school, I didn't know what accounting was at that point. But one of the first things I asked him is, do you know what Microsoft Excel is? And he's got no idea. I mean, he had never heard of the program itself. And somebody who's been in finance, admittedly not as long as others, but, 8 years, day one, I'm using Microsoft Excel. So for people that are in even private schools, they don't understand the core components that make up financial literacy. So I think, education and us providing people with the knowledge is crucial for us to change poverty, to change crime, and to really impact that cycle.
Right. I agree 1,000%. Mr. Hawkins, I have a question for you. What was how did you learn about finances to get to where you're at today?
The first thing is that there has to be a desire and from our vantage point, a desire that you want to have nice things in life, and that they cost money. So I want to find a way to earn above average income to have an above average life. And so you get around people that are doing well, and you ask those individuals for their help. And what you'll find out is that people, when they find that you're sincere, they will sit with you and talk with you and begin to tell you what to do. Now, caution you, if you don't do the things that they're asking you to do, you'll find that they'll get quiet on you and you'll probably stay stuck where you are. So I asked people about business, my professor at University of South Carolina, about business and about, majoring in marketing and business. And I got a chance to ask them what were they earning. And finally, after I guess about 7 classes, they got upset with me enough to tell me. And I figured out right quick that they didn't have a business, and they were not making back in '85, but about $45,000 a year. But they were talking to me about business. So I knew there was a lot of self-study necessary. So got involved with an organization that was teaching about investing, teaching about the right kind of insurance. And then people that were having great success, Tyler, actually, gleaming from those individuals and asking them questions. And when you put yourself in an environment where you're humble enough to receive from someone else and not know it all, you can begin to start the process. I will tell you this, everything that's big starts small. And I'm give credit to that to your dad, Bishop Bailey, because ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't matter where anybody else is. The only thing that matters is where you are. And our community, as Chris just spoke about, if we have more finances, it eliminates a lot of problems that people go through in life unnecessarily because they're always on a panic mode. Mm-hmm. So my teaching came from individuals that just simply challenged me with saving money. And I remember the first challenge, gentleman, his name's Ted Rentz, lives in Columbia out on the lake. He said, save $50 a month. I said, that's nothing. He said, put it in this Fidelity mutual fund. I said, that's nothing. And that $50 was my start. And it went from 50, and he'd come back to me and say, go to 100. Come back to me, 400, 500. And so when you treat that like a light bill or like a cell phone bill today, and you put that money aside to set yourself in savings before you even determine, how great of an investment it's going to be, you just start fundamentally. And what that will do, as Chris mentioned earlier, it'll force you to get on a budget, because if I'm saving this money and I'm committed to saving this amount of money, which in most people's eyes may say, well, that's a little bit of money. But when you commit to do that, you start watching the rest of your income. And then you get excited about, hey, how much can I really save? Okay. And then, as Chris talked about, when you're self-employed or you're 1099 employee, you realize that, look, the money that you're saving, it's not all your money. You owe some to our business partners, the federal government and the state government. And if you ever want to be really good, if you decide to get into business or have a 1099 income, you have to make sure that you have good people handling your books and keeping up with your records. And so for me, I realized that I'm not good at that. So I have a wife, and I have a bookkeeper, and I have an accounting firm, and I have the team together to help make sure that those things go well. So when I need the information, it's in front of me. So I will tell you that I got a lesson through the years, and it required me, Tyler, to sit with people that were professional, that had professional licenses, and ask them questions, and not trying to do it myself. A lot of people come to me and they said, man, I'm a rocket scientist. And, I find out when they come outside and they got a hammer and a screwdriver, they're probably not a rocket scientist. And that's a big deal.
I was going to say a lot of self-study to get to where you're at. And unfortunately, that seems to be a lot of people's story who have some sort of financial success. I think it's commendable to have that drive to get to where you're at, to have that initiative to learn about finances. But I still believe the best way to make sure a community as a whole is if there are programs and policies in place to make sure that the public has a decent level of financial literacy. And no shade to any subjects that we learned in school, Chris, and you as well, Mr. Hawkins, but you're more likely to need to know how to balance a checkbook, judge an interest rate, know how to save your money, know when you can even pull your money out of the mandatory retirement that your job is making you put your money into, than you would have to use geometry today. I remember one thing they used to say, hey, well, if you have no calculator, what are you going to do? Right now, we all have one on our cell phone. So we need to be financially literate. But I want to keep the conversation going to talk about some really simple things, simple topics that concern financial literacy, but people may not know. All right. And the first thing is, right now we're still in the middle of a pandemic. so people, please don't forget, we are still in a pandemic, and a lot of people are hurting, not just in their physical bodies from the coronavirus, but also financially. And the government has rolled out several policies, stimulus checks, PPP for businesses, the EIDL loan for businesses as well. And so some people are receiving stimulus checks now, which could be a very, very large sum of money for people. And so the first thing I would like to ask y'all is, what would you recommend if somebody wanted to get their finances in order, right? They know they're about to get a stimulus check and they may be getting a tax return at the same time. Could be a pretty big windfall. What would you recommend that people do with that money? And they're at the start. They're not where you are, Mr. Hawkins. They don't have a business like Chris. They may not even have an emergency fund. What would you recommend that people do with their stimulus check and or tax return?
Well, I got two things. First, let me echo one little thing that Mr. Hawkins said earlier about the importance of budgeting. As I mentioned earlier, the biggest bulk of my business is dealing with high estate divorces. So, when you look at the product we have to deliver to the court, it's called a financial declaration. You're declaring to the court your finances. And the first 2 pages of that financial declaration, the first one is income, how much money you got coming in a month. And the second page is your expenses. And I'll tell you, I work with people who, make $1 million, $1.5 million a year in income. And you look at what their estate is when they're 65 or 70 years old. And you're sitting here thinking, this family is over here making $1 million a year. They should have a $25, $30 million estate. Just over time, it should grow like that. But what you see is ultimately they'll have a $6 or $8 million estate. And the reason is, when you look at that second page of the financial declaration where they outline their budget, they never budget for savings. Every single case I look at, there's one line item that's called entertainment. And that entertainment item is going to have vacations involved. It's going to have meals out. And every time you'll see that number at $5,000 or $6,000 a month. And then you got a line for savings, and you'll see that amount at the, $1,600 that they contribute to an IRA. Now, why is somebody spending 4 times in entertainment that they are in saving money for their future? And I just want to point that out, because even people that are surgeons and doctors and whoever it is, they don't understand the core of saving money to be able to accumulate wealth. And I guess that being said, to me, if I get a stimulus check, and I have some credit card debt where I'm accumulating 25% a year in interest on that, I'm paying down the credit card, because I don't know how many investments you can put your money in and earn 25% a year. So to me, I'm seeing, okay, I have credit card A, credit card B, which one of these is charging the most interest on me? And I'm paying that down, because that's going to save you more money in an interest expense because of your debt than you would earn from income from an asset that would yield you 10 or 12%.
You just said something that's shows that you're very financially literate. A lot of people right now who are getting stimulus checks, and they may be thinking, hey, I can buy some stock, I can buy some Bitcoin. They're thinking about what they can put their money into to make more money. And they're really not taking a deep dive to look at what's their biggest cost and what's really costing them money. So if you're watching this, I think one thing Chris just said is very important. Look at your debt and look at your interest rates, because that's the hidden cost. If you don't take care of that, you don't need to be investing any money at all. I think that's one thing that's very important. If you get a stimulus check, if you want to be financially literate, I would recommend, just like Chris said, paying down that debt of the highest interest rate credit card that you have. Mr. Hawkins, anything you would recommend people do with their stimulus checks?
Yes, I agree with Chris, and of course agree with you, Tyler. But let me just tell you, as they're getting their stimulus checks back, as they're getting their EIDL money or the PPP money, or they're getting their tax returns, I would recommend, first of all, look at that money on a percentage basis. And I'd recommend them to take 10% of that money, okay, and set it aside to tithing to your local church. Number one, that's 90%. I recommend them taking 10% of that money and putting 10% into a for-keep savings for themselves. Then I'd recommend them, anybody that they promised that they were going to give money to, that gave them money in a critical time or critical situation, contact that individual, okay, and let them know that you want to contribute some, if not all, the money that you pay or borrowed from them, okay? Then do exactly what Chris is saying. Take that money and go back on the meals you purchased or the clothes that you purchased or the emergency money used on credit cards and try to mitigate those as much as possible. That's what I'd recommend for people to be able to do with the money they're getting from stimulus. Now, do not get rid of all the money, okay? So as it relates to paying down debt or expenses, really evaluate and keep a little bit of money in emergency funds, maybe 10 to 15% for emergency funds, so that if you have something that hiccups short term, you have a way that you can kind of be responsible for that, okay? So what I don't advocate doing, okay, is taking those dollars and being a consumer. What you see happening right now in this global economy is everybody's fighting for your money. They know it's coming, and they want you to put that money right back into the economy. And there are some people that have to pay their rent, may have to pay their light bill, that won't really see any extra discretionary cash from the stimulus money funds or maybe from the tax returns, but just begin to do some basic accounting or budgeting, as Chris said, with the money. It's a one-time hit. It's not over and over and over again. So really plan it out, because there are people out there, when you go to school, you learn about reading, writing, and arithmetic. You don't learn how to stay married, raise your children, or manage your finances. And so you've got to do a little bit of homework on your own or get some help from somebody that will help you. But I would say you tithe. And when I say tithe, to give 10%. And then I would say then give the next 10% to yourself, okay? And then mitigate some expenses. That's just working within margins. And if you work within margins, you'll never be out of bounds.
Yeah, that's some real good advice, and very practical too. Now, Chris, I think you'll be good for this question I have. Let's say you're 30 years old, you're a young person, and you're listening to Mr. Hawkins, myself, and you tell them what they should do with their money. And your thought is, how can I even save money when I'm living paycheck to paycheck? What do you recommend for people to, I guess, have the courage really to save your money when it looks like you need all your money just to survive? Do you recommend people just, pay all their bills and go back to zero? Or do you recommend people pay themselves first to save so they can set themselves up?
I mean, I do like what Mr. Hawkins said as far as, when you get that stimulus check in, you got to keep some aside for the rainy day fund. Something goes down, you got to have some money to be able to cover that. I, like you, am an entrepreneurial guy. So to me, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you got to figure out a way, to maybe produce more income. If you look at, a business that's trying to increase their value of their company, ultimately what does that is better cash flow at the end of the year. And there's two ways to get more cash flow. One, you got to produce more income. That's kind of a no-brainer. But two, you cut expenses. I mean, those are the only two ways that you can make that bottom line number that increases the value of somebody's company. So, if I'm somebody who's living paycheck to paycheck and I don't want to be living that life anymore, you look at two things. I either got to, one, produce more income, or two, I got to cut out expenses. So if you understand the simple, the ability to budget, you can look at your expenses that you can try to cut back. And maybe there aren't any expenses that you can cut back. And so to me, at that point, that's when your back's against the wall. And so I'd try to go the entrepreneurial route. I mean, how can you start a business and provide a service to somebody and earn money? There are, so many different avenues you can go down to become a business owner and to be independent. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, that's great advice. Either you need to cut expenses or you increase the income. That's great advice. And a lot of times people say, "Hey, I can't save," but I think you really hit the nail on the head by encouraging people to look to either, when you're in that position, hey, how can I make some more money? Maybe you could sell some things on eBay. Maybe you could rake somebody's yard if you have to. Do whatever it takes to make some more money or cut your expenses. Now, y'all both hit on this a little bit, which is building wealth. And Chris, you said you're an entrepreneurial guy. Mr. Hawkins, he's been doing this for a while, and I think that people building wealth is something that everybody wants to hear. When they hear money, financial literacy, they want to know how can they get rich, how can they build wealth. What are the first steps that you would recommend people start to implement to build wealth, Mr. Hawkins?
The first thing is realize is your most valuable asset in the world is your living, your being. And the first fundamental process of wealth building is creating an immediate estate. And you do that through using life insurance. The second part of that process is ideally understanding that you're going to now save money and work within the margins of, hey, I'm going to have a percentage for this and a percentage for that. And I'm gonna live. If you're out of whack, and a lot of people are out of whack with their spending, you begin to wheel that thing back in. Now, I'm gonna say this, and this is not necessarily anything you're gonna read about, but when you look at if you're already tore up from the floor up, okay, you've got to take some faith steps as it relates to your money, and you've got to determine that, hey, look, I'm gonna save this money each and every week. Yeah, I may be behind on this bill or late on this bill, but I'm going to begin to start saving some money. Especially if you've made a decision that you're not going to go out and do something to increase your income. You're going to be an employee still and not increase your income. So I'm going to make a decision. I'm going to go ahead. This money that I'm receiving, I'm going to put my faith into it. I'm going to put tithes on the money. I'm going to save myself some money. And then I'm going to work myself into that budget without going out spending unnecessarily. Today, we just came back from dinner and it was $150, and that's common, 3 or 4 times a week with my family. But it was not always that way. Okay, you go and you find a way that you're going to do the budget, and you're going to cook, and you're going to plan things so that you can accumulate money, so that you can later on in life you can have some luxuries that maybe you are planning for. But for me, it's critical. If you're going to build wealth, you start with the basics, and then you get into, home ownership, which in our community, Black and Brown community, it's the biggest asset we do have. So first of all, life insurance, because tomorrow's not promised, and if you die tonight, then you've left something for your life to the people you love and you care about. Okay. The second part is begin to save some money. And the third piece of that puzzle is, if you're not able to work, or if you have something, happen to you critically, that there's finances to sustain the family until you get back to work. So mine is very fundamental, very basic. And you can do that for as little as, it doesn't cost a lot. You can do that for $30 or $40 or $50 a month. And you can put yourself on a track. So that's my basic fundamental process of that.
That's some great advice about building wealth. But go ahead, Chris.
I just want to echo, kind of on what Mr. Hawkins was saying. One of my role models said a couple of years ago, you got to watch your chicken and you got to watch your mentals. And that wise man is Marshawn Lynch, and somebody I look up to, because people don't understand this about Marshawn. He didn't spend $1 of his salary throughout his career. His entire salary was saved. He lived off of all of his endorsements. And right now, Marshawn is a financial advisor to some of these NFL guys. And you don't have to, say all the big words that an accountant or financial guy can say. It's simple. It's, knowledge is power. The more you know inside of your head, the more value you can create in a business. When I started my business, I was Googling everything for months, and I still am, but the more you learn, the more value you add, the more money you can make, and watching out for your mentals and watching out for your chicken. You need to make sure that your baby is your money, and
So,
that's all I wanted to say there.
Chris, I'm gonna ask you to do something for the viewers. Break down when you say your chicken. What do you mean by protecting the chicken, watching out for your chicken? Somebody may not understand that verbiage you're using. What does that mean?
Well, I hope that I understood the way that Marshawn was saying it, but to me, his chicken is his money. With so many people that were in the NFL that were high earners, they spend their money on some ridiculous things that they don't need. And I think what Marshawn is saying is don't get into that trap. Just because you all of a sudden get a raise doesn't mean you need to go sell your car and buy a nicer one. If you start doing that stuff and, you spend every dollar that you're making, you're never going to save money and build wealth and be able to go to dinner 3 or 4 times a week and spend $150 each time. You don't just wake up doing that. That happens over years and years of building wealth. And I think that, a lot of people, they would rather go buy a cell phone with a stimulus check because it's instant gratification. I got that in my hand the second I buy it. But what they don't understand is if they save that $1,500 stimulus check and put that into an investment account and don't touch it for 10 years, that same $1,500 10 years later is going to be $3,000 or $4,000. And they don't understand that, that money can compound and grow and build you wealth.
Right. Yeah, that's all good, Chris. And we have a good question from Keisha Walker here, which she was asking me, but I believe you're the one who answered this question, Chris, but I'm going to add to it and let you answer it as well. But in reading Keisha's question and summarizing without reading the whole thing, she's asking whether we're advising that people do not invest their stimulus check money on stocks, Bitcoin, or other things on the internet and pay debt, or as she says, get rich quick intent. What I believe is everybody needs to know their own financial situation and assess what they should do with the stimulus check. So, for example, if you do not have a savings account, you don't have an emergency fund, you have 4 or 5 credit cards, all of which are 13 to 25, maybe even 30% interest. And now you received maybe $4,000 stimulus check or so. In that situation, what Chris was saying is you need to really hit the jackpot of all investments to be able to make up for what you're losing every month in interest. So that person should pay down their debt, because eliminating a 20% interest rate on your credit card is more likely than investing in Bitcoin and it going up 45 to 50% to make up for that 25% loss you're taking, and it's compounding monthly. So I believe that's what Chris was saying, and that's what I'll advise too. Chris, you want to add to that question?
Yeah, no, I think you answered it perfectly. I think that any decision that you make, you evaluate the trade-offs. If you're looking at buying a house, if that house cost you $400,000, are you going to pay all cash or are you going to finance it? And so what you would look at there is, that $400,000, if you invest that, you would earn 7 or 8% a year. And if you finance that house, you're probably going to pay 3% in interest. So that $400,000 earning you 7% is going to make you 4% more a year, than financing the house. So that would be a trade-off there. And then with the stimulus check situation, it's like I have this credit card right here that is charging me 20% interest, or I could go invest in Apple stock, which is going to give me a return of 10%. You're going to lose 15% or $150 by investing in Apple stock as opposed to paying off that credit card.
Yeah, that's real good. And I want to keep the conversation moving. One thing that we all three were talking about off camera was a Wall Street Journal article that was published this September. And the Wall Street Journal article was forecasted by some insurance companies who thought they were going to take a lot of losses to their bottom line due to the pandemic. And what they realized was that they over projected the losses that they would take, because the people who are dying from COVID-19 were least likely to own life insurance. And if you look at the inequities that have been exposed or brought to the forefront of people's minds as a result of the coronavirus pandemic, is that it is affecting Black and brown communities at a disproportionate rate that is affecting other communities. So that being said, Black and brown people, what the insurance companies were learning were, one, less likely to own life insurance policies, or two, if they had a life insurance policy, it probably was not a high value life insurance policy. And they also were finding that the majority of people were, if they weren't from a minority community, they were elderly, and those people were less likely to have life insurance. And I think that shows that financial literacy, one, Black and brown communities, minorities, not knowing that they should have larger policies, or if people who are selling insurance policies making assumptions about those communities, thinking that they will have no interest in a higher value life insurance policy. And I think that goes right back to the heart of the issue that we are talking about today, that financial literacy, not knowing that you should have a life insurance policy to, one, take care of your loved ones if you happen to pass untimely, and two, you can leave an inheritance to your family, 6 figures worth, to the 5 figures, or $1 million insurance policy. So, Mr. Hawkins, you've been around and doing this for a while. Why do you think it is the case that minorities are less likely to either have life insurance, or sometimes their life insurance policies aren't that high in value?
Thank you so much. And that's a great question, great comment. Number one is because life insurance is something that's about a story told as opposed to being something sold. And so you don't have enough people that are speaking to that population base on a consistent basis to talk with them about the value of life insurance. So there's a big void in enough representatives to speak to that community. It's an underserved market. I can say that an organization, Premier Legacy, is an organization, premierlegacy.net, because this is the thing. When the life insurance companies actuarially put out their vacuum of a loss with this pandemic, they were thinking all the people. And a disproportionate number of older people wound up dying from the COVID-19. Therefore, those individuals had what was called term insurance while they were working. And when they were no longer working, or they reached a particular age, years, those policies dissipated. So thereby they didn't have any permanent protection. A lot of the younger people, that's not a priority for them, so they would not have it. So of the 550,000 people that did pass away, 450,000 of them had no insurance coverage. A lot of the seniors just didn't have a permanent policy. And the market that we serve today is a grossly underserved market. And Tyler, just today, right now, in that same marketplace, 50 to 85 years of age, you have 55% of those individuals that have no coverage. You have another 35 to 40% of them that are underinsured. So I know firsthand that there's a huge need to talk with them about the final expense, which is when they're older, but more importantly, for them to get themselves the right kind of insurance when they're younger. And it's been a game, and the insurance companies have won. And I'm in the $1 trillion industry. They played the term insurance against the whole life insurance. I challenge you to get with the agent that's going to give you all that in one policy, that's going to make sure that you have the term insurance today, but you have permanent coverage forever, because that's a problem.
Yeah.
That's why we've got this big disparity. And the insurance companies were excited because the younger people were not dying as fast as the older people, and the coverage they had on the older people had went away because they've their term ran out, they left the job for employment, or they retired and they did not have benefits.
Yeah, and I read the article a few times, and one thing is African Americans and minorities are making up 20% of the COVID-19 deaths or a fifth of the deaths, when we only make up 13% of the population. And also a quote that was in here by Eugene Mitchell, he used to run New York Life Insurance. He stated that many life insurance companies don't talk to Black people because they believe or perceive that Black people aren't interested in larger life insurance policies, or Black people aren't interested in larger policies because the companies aren't talking to them about those options. So it's a twofold problem here. We're having people who have the information about life insurance who are thinking that there's a segment of the population who's not interested in it. And then you have a segment of the population who does not have this knowledge because the people who have it aren't giving it. And that goes right to the heart of financial literacy. People like yourself, Chris, who are taking time out their day to talk to people who are streaming in live on Facebook, YouTube, or wherever else they're viewing it, to give them information. We need more people to teach people. And we need a community that understands the depth of the impact when people are not financially literate. So unfortunately, when I heard about this article from Mr. Hawkins a couple weeks ago, we were on a phone call. He said, I read an article saying that the majority of people who died from COVID-19 do not have life insurance. And that just went right back to the disproportionate inequities that we are seeing every day. And there's a rise, it's risen in people's consciousness about this being a problem. Chris, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, you and I talked about this briefly, and I don't really know as much about the life insurance side, but there are certainly inequities. And it's all, it's financial literacy, but literacy in general. And I told you this, Tyler, and Mr. Hawkins, I didn't get to mention to you, but, I'm the treasurer of a board in the nonprofit. It's called Heart Ed Youth Zone. The guy who started it's a guy named Akil Ross. Akil is a great guy. And what, this foundation is doing is setting up these youth zones in low income areas. And the first youth zone that we've got set up is in Harbison Gardens. So we serve Harbison Gardens and Harbison West. We have a little girl that's in second grade, and this little girl couldn't identify the letter H when she first came to us. And this little girl, she goes to a lower school just like other people do, but because she's got nothing to do after school, she's so far behind other students. And it is, more inequity in the lower income areas. But now because, we've provided education to this little girl, she's reading a book. And so we're starting at this low point to provide education to these people to give them a chance so that, that same second grader, by the time she gets to college, she has she'll have a choice if she wants to go to college. So that literacy starts early so that when they get older, they understand about life insurance. So I think that there's a lot of inequities in literacy in general.
Well, I agree. And we were talking about inequities. And one of the last topics I want to talk about, which is in the gray area, and I mentioned it when I made a post about this, is that I believe that being financially illiterate is a public health crisis. And it's a public health crisis that's not being addressed throughout the country. And so I was doing some research on this, and unlike the pandemic that we're in now, there is no definition technically of a public crisis. And experts at the Boston University School of Public Health suggest that a public health crisis must meet three criteria. And guys, I'm sorry, it's going to be like a game show that we're going to do here. And I want to hear your personal opinion on it, whether you believe that being financially illiterate is a public health crisis using the criteria that the experts have made. So to be a public health crisis, it must be a problem that affects a large number of people. It must threaten health over long term, and it must require the adoption of large scale solutions. So in using those three, we'll talk about them, and I want to encourage people watching to make any comments they have or ask any questions. And the first thing is, to be a public health crisis for financial literacy, it must affect a large number of people. And I agree that the first prong is met. And doing some research, nationwide testing demonstrates that the average person lacks basic financial knowledge to make qualified financial decisions. 53% of adults are financially anxious, according to FINRA. 2 in 3 families lack emergency fund, and that was a study by J.P. Morgan Chase. 78% of adults live paycheck to paycheck, and 4 out of 5 adults facing barriers of home ownership. I mean, these are huge numbers here. 78% of adults living paycheck to paycheck. 4 out of 5 adults, as Mr. Hawkins was talking about, home ownership is one of the first steps to building wealth. 4 out of 5 adults face barriers to even owning a home. So first thing is, do you believe that being financially illiterate is negatively affecting a large segment of the population? And Chris, I'll let you go first.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, there's not a whole lot more I can echo to say no with what you just said. I mean, that's the numbers. And I think being financially illiterate, I think that leads people to, one, having no money, when the result of having no money then, incentivizes somebody to commit a crime because they're desperate. So then that affects that next person that they commit a crime to. So it's not only the person who is financially broke, but then it affects the other people, where the crime is committed against. So I think that if people are more financially illiterate, I think that it solves a whole lot of problems that we face.
I agree 1,000%. Mr. Hawkins, what about you?
Absolutely. There's no doubt, as Chris said, and as you mentioned, that it's a huge problem, and it's not going to get fixed unless we take a conscious effort to get in front of people and begin to understand that they didn't learn this as a child. They don't understand this as an adult, and they must actually sit down and listen to someone that's going to give them some fundamental foundations about this. If not, it's going to continue to repeat itself. And even though it's a major problem, and the statistics show it's a major problem, the people that are already financially independent, the people that are already very wealthy, they're not necessarily in a place where they're going out to find that group of people and helping them come along. When Wall Street is counting on people to take their stimulus check and buy stock when it's going up, okay? And they're counting on those people that when it comes down to sell the stock, they're going to buy the stock when it's down low and drive it up to being high. So the financial literacy that's necessary to people is a group of people like yourself taking this huge program and saying, hey, look, we're going to do what we can to help the next one person. And it's one person at a time that's willing to listen. And I will say this for the industry. I will say this. Information is all over the place, but you can't do this by yourself. You have to have someone that's helping you with this process.
Yeah, that's real good. That's great. All very valid points. And this may be another conversation we have later, but it sounds as if you're saying Wall Street, and there are actually people who are profiting on the financially illiterate, which is something I agree 100% as well. I think there's a reason why financial literacy is not taught to people. We can have that conversation another time. So move on to the second prong is to be a public health crisis. The problem must threaten health over the long term. And if you've ever been broke before, you know, when you don't have any money in your pocket or in your bank account, your stress level goes up.
That's right.
When your stress level goes up, your blood pressure goes up, anxiety, you may not think as level-headed, and you can make rash decisions and harm yourself. So I believe that it's definitely a problem that's going to affect your health over time. And studies show that financial illiteracy contributes to poverty, lack of job opportunity, unemployment, wealth inequality. And that leads to lack of access to healthy food. lack to access to quality health care. And there is no health care and you're sick. Well, you can't afford to go to the doctor, or you think that you can't go to the doctor at all because you don't have health care or you don't have access to certain things. And that will lead to you dying at an earlier age. So I believe it threatens health over the long term. And I see Chris's face right now. If I ask him questions, he's going to say, of course it does. It's a no-brainer.
I got nothing more to add to that. I mean, that was well said, and you nailed it.
And
completely agree.
Perfect. Touchdown. I will say that studies, if you've talked about that stress that's put on you, ladies and gentlemen, that stress that's put on you will drive you to having early problems in your health, and it will kill you. Stress is serious business. And if it's all over the place, as Tyler's saying about food, about income, about place to stay, about finances, and then somebody that you love says that they need something from you, you now stress them out because they ask you for something that they need because you have a lack of finances. It's crazy.
Yeah. And we have Colleen Hawkins, who posted a comment saying low income equals poor healthcare. And, poor healthcare is going to affect your livelihood. If you're sick, you can't work. If you're sick, you can die early. So low income, poor healthcare. And if you don't know how to make money or how to save your money and keep your money because you're financially illiterate, that will result in you having low income, which will result in poor healthcare. So we agree the problem threatens health over a long period of time. And now the last thing or requisite that needs to be there, so it's considered a public health crisis, is the problem must require the adoption of large scale solutions. Not just us getting on Facebook Live and having some viewers who decide to tune in to learn about financial literacy. There needs to be large scale change to make sure that the next generation of kids, they know how to balance a checkbook, even though they probably won't even have checks, right? I mean, they're probably not even gonna write checks when they're older, or they know about interest rate, things that I learned from my father, which I said earlier. I was blessed to have a father who could teach me his mistakes that set him back for years. Now, I mean, if you don't have access to this knowledge, you are going to be set back and you're not going to be able to thrive. And I think it's really, we got to look at it as a whole. It's up to the community to implement large scale solutions to make sure that everybody rises, and not just the privileged who have an uncle, a father, to teach them these things. Or you have to rely on the just the inward drive that you have, Mr. Hawkins, to go to your professors to ask them how much they make. And you have the wherewithal to think, my professor's making X amount of dollars. I want to make X amount of dollars more. So what can I do to earn that living? So I think that we need to have large scale solutions to fix it. Thankfully, I will say that Richland County School District 1 now has financial literacy master's teachers, which is a huge step. Now, I think there's going to be a lot of policies for kids to make sure that they know how to be financially literate. But there's still a gap there because we have people who are in their 60s even who do not know things that Chris is saying. And Chris is, how old are you, 30, 28?
30.
30, all right, he's 30 years old. So we need to have a gap. We need to have policies and procedures and programs in place to help all have access to basic financial literacy. So in probably the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be outlining a huge financial literacy proposal and policies that I think the city needs to put in place to make sure that not only, like I said earlier, about children in Richland County School District 1 who may have a financial literacy professor, but adults, yet people who are married, who want to stay in Columbia, they want to buy a house, but they don't know where to go, or people who are, have just retired and they want to know, what do they do with their money now that they're retired? There needs to be a broad change to make sure that everybody's financially literate. And guys like Chris, who took the time out of his day to talk to us today, And Mr. Hawkins, I believe y'all two are two people who obviously are leading the charge on making sure people are financially literate by even taking time out of your evening to talk to the viewers today about financial literacy. Again, I told everybody I'll try to keep this to about an hour. Before we go, I want to first let Mr. Hawkins say any closing words. And after you say your closing words, please let people know how they can follow you, or if there's anything else there that you want people to know how to contact you, or if it's relating to financial literacy, please let the viewers know.
First of all, thank you, Tyler. This has been a great program, and I'm always excited to be able to share and contribute and talk to people about what I love. And it's an opportunity to get further and leave a better financial situation for the next generation. And so I just want to say that not everybody has their parents or loved ones or that can help them with this. Our organization has vast tentacles and great professional people all over the state of South Carolina, from the upstate with the Lucas family, from the middle state with the Griffin family, over in Georgia with the phenomenal people that are there. They're working within the organization up and down the East Coast. And so Premier Legacy, you can go to premierlegacy.net or Premier Legacy, FES.net link, and find some people that will help you. You can go online and get yourself an online bank savings account. Ally Bank is a great one. You can get yourself a college fund through Fidelity. And so there are places and resources, but we ask that you get with someone that can help guide you through those steps. It's critically important, and there's not a better time than today. So thank you, Tyler Bailey, for first of all, making a selfless move to serve the community. And secondly, to done a wonderful job with what you're doing. And Chris, man, just grateful for someone like you, that people that have businesses, and this is a Black community, that don't get the business evaluated, so they don't know really what it's worth. And so it's important to have Chris to say, hey, this is what you need to do for the future to increase the value of your business so that one day you can pass it or one day you can sell it. So Tyler, thank you so much. My direct phone number, I'll take phone calls, is 803-269-7678. And I'll direct you to the people that you can talk with and meet with. And that allows us to get the information out. So we want to be a solution to the problem and pass out information. Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you, Dale. Chris?
Yeah, I want to echo on a couple things that Mr. Hawkins said. And first, thank you for having me here. But also, a lot of people might think about a problem inside their head and ultimately not do anything about it. You have a growing and thriving legal practice and a growing family. It'd be really easy for you to sit back and keep doing those things. But, you're taking your time several hours a day, I assume, to run for city council to make a change. And not many people do that. So I thank you for doing that. And I think that, the issue of financial literacy is a big one that could solve a lot of other problems, not only, necessarily financially. And so I thank you for attacking that problem, because it's going to take somebody like you to change these things. One thing Mr. Hawkins said earlier, don't be scared to call somebody and make a mentor. I'm a firm believer that you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most. You hang out with 5 people like LeBron James, you're going to be pretty darn close to a LeBron James. But you hang out with 5 people who are, on the street doing nothing, you're going to tend to go towards that crowd. So, associate with, people that can help you. My number is 803-748-2644. Anybody wants to set up an Excel spreadsheet, I will happily bore you with some education on Microsoft Excel, and I will help you set up a budget to get yourself on a path to build some wealth. So thank you for listening to all of us talk. And again, thank you, Tyler.
Oh, thank you, Chris. And tell everybody your website again of your business.
Yeah, my website is leventisfinancial.com. I'm a forensic CPA and a business valuation expert. And Mr. Hawkins, also thank you for your time. As you can see, I got my notepad and I've been taking notes on some of the stuff you've been saying over there. So I'm becoming more financially literate by sitting here listening to a guy who's way more seasoned and knowledgeable than I. So I think we can all take the time to learn from people like Mr. Hawkins as well.
Well, look, and I'll tell you this, Chris. I know Mr. Hawkins personally. You and I, we have a good relationship too. He gave his number out. So if you ever want to call him and just allow him to talk, because he loves to talk too. He'll talk, and you can just say nothing. He has a lot of wisdom that he'll give you. So hopefully you took a note of his number. And what I'm going to do for everybody watching, I'm going to put all of Chris's information on my profiles, all my personal profiles, my campaign profiles as well, anywhere I'm on social media. And I'll put the same thing for Mr. Hawkins' information. Both these gentlemen have vast knowledge, and they are both, as you see, definitely financially literate. And I really want to just appreciate y'all coming on here tonight. I mean, there's plenty of other things y'all could have been doing on this Thursday, but you decided to talk about financial literacy on Financial Literacy Awareness Month this April with me. So I don't take that lightly, and I appreciate all the words and support that you have for me personally and my campaign. And again, everybody, I am Tyler Bailey. I'm running for City Council here in Columbia at large. I'm from Columbia. I want to see Columbia do well. I want to see this be a community where everybody can succeed, raise a family, live and do well, regardless of what side of town that you're on. I'll be having these talks throughout my entire campaign. And the majority of our talks are going to be to give you information and also hear just issues that are important for the community, because I want to be the person to be able to address those. So if you want to contact me, I'll put my personal cell phone number on my profile as well. And I get calls all the time. So if I miss your call, I will get back to you. Leave a message, text me. To learn more about my campaign, you can visit tylerforcolumbia.com. If you just Google Tyler Bailey, Columbia, you'll find my law firm website, my personal social media handles, along with my campaign information as well. This is the first segment, which I'm calling Talks with Tyler, to take Columbia to the next level. And we got guys like Mr. Hawkins and Chris Leventis here who are leading the change to take our city to the next level. Y'all have a great evening. I'll be in touch soon. And thank you for spending your time with us. Y'all take care.
God bless. Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you, Tyler.
My pleasure, guys.